What's going on, everybody? Coming back to you with another video today, and we are going to talk about bad weather riding, and I have some tips for you. It's better to know these things now before you get stuck in any type of bad weather. So stand by as I go through these tips. Hopefully they help you out. I think it's fair to say that I have been through my fair share of bad weather riding. I've gone through rainstorms and hailstorms and tornadoes and snowstorms. You know, it does not make me an expert by any means, but these are things that I felt helped my chances for success to get through there. And I think it's important to share these tips with you because it did help my confidence level. So hopefully you guys enjoy these. So the first rule in bad weather riding, we're going to take this right out of Mr. Miyagi's book, which is no be there.
The best defense is no be there.
You want to go ahead and try to avoid riding in bad weather if you can. I get it. If you're out on the road, either you've already been through it. If not, trust me, if you ride long enough, you will get stuck into some, unexpected bad weather. So if you can avoid it, that's the best thing, but I get that's common sense. So moving on to rule number 2. Now, rule number 2 is going to be that you need to relax your shoulders and your hands and let your bike work. This is something that's easier said than done, and you almost have to consciously tell yourself to relax your shoulders and your arms, to let the bike do its job. Let that suspension work in your favor. Because if you are all tensed up because the wind's blowing real strong, or you have some ice, snow, or something on the road, it is going to reflect directly to the bike. That tense movement, believe it or not, is not helping your cause, it's actually hurting your cause. The bike is in its gyro, it wants to be stable. The bike wants to go straight. The bike is set up that way. So you need to let the suspension do its job, let the tires do their job, and consciously, really consciously tell yourself that you are going to relax your shoulders, relax your arms, and your hands. If your hands are going numb, you're gripping your bike way too tight, way too tight. So find a way to tell yourself a mantra so that the bike can work. It's going to help out. The third rule is going to be to avoid all abrupt movements on the bike. That includes, taking a stab at your brakes. That includes hard acceleration. That also includes the input on your handlebars needs to be smooth and concise. The best way to practice this is going to be on a nice, warm, sunny day, so you can start working off rolling off that throttle, applying that brake pressure slowly, and then increasing that brake pressure. Because when you're in a bad weather situation, your natural human reaction, if something was to come out in the middle of the road, maybe it's a ladder, maybe it's an animal, is going to be to stab at those brakes, and you want to avoid that at all costs. So get out there and practice on warm, sunny days so that you can prepare yourself, get out on an open road, get up to speed, and then roll off that throttle and slowly grab onto the front brake and apply pressure where you can increase it as you go. Because in bad weather riding, obviously your stopping distance is going to be way different, and if you stab the brakes, there's a high likelihood you're going to go down. So you need to be practicing that. That goes for inputs on the handlebars as well. You want to make them smooth and concise movements, not movements that are going to be like it was a warm sunny day. You're just not going to just dip the bike, right? It needs to be smooth and concise. Things that you have to practice, things that you have to mentally think about beforehand so that when you get stuck in these situations, you're prepared for it. So the next rule is going to be lean into it and anticipate. Now, this is more geared towards high winds. I did battle quite a bit of high winds in Iowa. It was probably the worst that I experienced, minus that tornado, obviously. But riding for 28 miles or so straight with a 40-mile-an-hour constant crosswind. So what you need to do is be leaning that bike into the wind and then anticipating. The way you do that is really quite simple. If the wind is blowing right to left, you need to apply a little bit of pressure on your right handle grip. It doesn't take much. You can see just a little bit of pressure to lean that bike over into the wind. That gets you back to a homeostasis line or a neutral line. And then you need to actually think about and anticipate the gusts of wind. And what I mean by that is not only the natural gusts of wind, but you have big rigs that are going down at 85 miles an hour, especially in the Midwest. Like, those guys know how to drive the big rig. Plus, I don't know if you guys know this, but they are actually more stable at speed than, you know, going slower. So in higher wind areas, believe it or not, they're going to be going a little bit faster because it helps stable that load. On a bike, we don't really have that luxury because it gets more dangerous for us, but those big rigs will pass you at 85 miles an hour. You have to anticipate this gust, and that gust, it doesn't matter if it's a car coming from the other direction or a big rig in the other direction or on the same side. That wind is going to feel like it sucks you in. Then there'll be an abrupt gust of wind, if you will, that you need to anticipate for. This is why going back to relaxing those shoulders, relaxing those arms and that hand and those hands, squeeze your legs into your gas tank and anticipate that abrupt wind gust that you're going to feel, especially around the big rigs. Wind is intimidating because it's like ever changing. Like I said, you could be battling that 40 mile an hour constant wind, and then there's going to be pockets of, you know, maybe 6 mile an hour wind, just because that's how wind works, and you're going to feel this movement of, oh my gosh, right? If you are gripping too tight, you're tense, you're actually making yourself a sail, and that is going to directly impact the bike and what it's doing. You really want to make sure that loose shoulders, I can't express that enough, just really loose shoulders. You have to tell yourself, make sure your hands are nice and loose on the grips, squeeze in with your legs on the gas tank to give yourself a feeling of stability and make it more stable on the bike, and let the bike work. But finding that neutral line, that line where the wind and your bike kind of can go straight, even if you're kind of pushing it to one side, is crucial to battle it through, because you're gonna have to lean into it. It just happens. So the next one, it seems like it makes sense, but it's actually, there are a few exceptions to this rule. Pull over if possible. If you can avoid it and you're into it and you can safely pull over, do that. Because storms, you know, out here on the West Coast, storms are a little bit different in the Midwest. I learned this the hard way in Sturgis 2020 when that big hailstorm came through. We were leaving Keystone and we were debating, what do we do? What do we do? We still have like an hour ride to get back to Sturgis. We elected to get into rain gear and power through. And we were caught at nighttime in that lightning, thunder, hailstorm, rainstorm. Out there, storms will blow in, they'll dump their rain, do what they got to do, and then they're out. You can actually wait out storms more often than you think. But that was because I wasn't familiar with those types of storms, wasn't familiar with the area at that time. So if you can pull over safely, wait it out. Now, the exception to this rule, as I discovered recently in that snowstorm, sometimes it's just not safe to do so. So when I was on the road, I could see that there was a pile of snow on all sides of my lane. And getting off an off-ramp and going down into an area that would more than likely be ice, loaded down with all my gear, was not going to be a safe option. So I actually elected to take it slow and steady, stay the course, and not pull over and just power through, which I believe was the safest bet. But it's not the time to go hot dogging, right? It's not the time to say, oh, I'm going to prove how much of a, you know, badass I am by trying to push through in those situations. Take it slow. If you can pull over, do it. I get that it's not always possible, so just keep that in mind. You know, these are judgment calls, but make this plan in your mind ahead of time and think of all the variables, right? Is it all rock and gravelly in that area? Take them all into consideration. So lastly, I want to talk about getting yourself and investing, it's not that expensive, but in a really good weather app, one that comes with a good Doppler system, and check that Doppler frequently. I think we all can agree that we have jumped on our iPhone weather app, and that weather app ended up being completely wrong. So get yourself a good weather app, get yourself something with a Doppler system, and look at it. If it says 0% chance of rain, but that Doppler system shows otherwise, I would definitely trust the Doppler over everything else, and just kind of plan ahead. You can kind of almost see hour by hour where that storm's gonna be. But for, you know, a couple bucks, there's so many of them out there, I can't recommend one over the other. Just as long as it's got a Doppler system, you should be good to go. But those are my thoughts on bad weather riding. I want you guys to leave a comment below on other tips you might know from bad weather riding. Share them with others. If you guys want to check out that video of me being trapped in that snowstorm, it's a 2-part video going out to Arizona Bike Week. I'll link that video right here. Folks, until next time, you guys ride safe, you be safe, and we'll catch you on the next one.